Nobody expected one quiet private conversation between Tian Xiwei and Zhang Linghe to emotionally explode into what fans are now calling the most heartbreaking celebrity love confrontation of the year. And before you scroll away, you need to stay until the very end, because what reportedly happened behind closed doors involved emotional confessions, hidden fears, tears, painful honesty, shocking vulnerability, and one devastating question that reportedly left Zhang Linghe completely frozen afterward. So subscribe right now because this story unfolds with romance, emotional tension, hidden insecurities, private heartbreak, and scenes so mind-blowing fans across the world still cannot emotionally recover afterward. For months, fans everywhere emotionally celebrated the growing connection publicly between Tian Xiwei and Zhang Linghe afterward. Every public interaction reportedly looked emotionally effortless afterward. Every interview publicly sparked emotional rumors privately afterward. Every shared glance reportedly fueled fan theories emotionally across social media publicly afterward. But according to insiders, something emotionally deeper reportedly existed privately between them afterward, long before fans publicly realized afterward. At first, both stars allegedly tried emotionally keeping distance publicly during interviews and filming schedules afterward. Because according to sources, neither reportedly wanted emotional rumors publicly spiraling privately out of control afterward. But witnesses later claimed the emotional chemistry publicly between them became impossible privately to hide afterward. Lingering eye contact emotionally during interviews publicly afterward. Unexpected smiles privately afterward. Moments of emotional silence publicly that reportedly looked far too real privately to simply ignore afterward. Then, according to insiders, everything reportedly changed emotionally after a private gathering publicly following a major production celebration afterward. Witnesses later described the atmosphere emotionally quiet publicly compared privately to the usual celebrity parties afterward. Soft music reportedly echoing emotionally through the luxury rooftop venue publicly afterward. Tokyo city lights privately glowing beneath the night sky afterward. Rain reportedly falling softly emotionally beyond the glass walls publicly afterward. According to insiders, Tian Xiwei allegedly appeared emotionally quieter privately than usual afterward. Meanwhile, Zhang Linghe reportedly spent most of the evening emotionally watching her privately from across the room afterward. At first, witnesses reportedly assumed publicly nothing unusual emotionally was happening privately afterward. But according to sources, several insiders allegedly noticed emotional tension publicly growing privately between them afterward. Because every time Zhang Linghe reportedly approached emotionally closer publicly toward Tian Xiwei afterward, she allegedly seemed emotionally nervous privately afterward. Not uncomfortable publicly, not distant privately, just emotionally overwhelmed afterward. Then, according to insiders, the emotional atmosphere reportedly changed completely publicly once the party privately started ending afterward. Witnesses later claimed Zhang Linghe allegedly quietly asked emotionally Tian Xiwei publicly if they could privately speak alone afterward. That moment reportedly instantly caught attention emotionally from nearby staff publicly afterward. Because according to insiders, the emotional expression publicly on Tian Xiwei's face privately changed immediately afterward. Fear emotionally, hope publicly, confusion privately afterward. According to witnesses, both stars allegedly later walked emotionally toward a private balcony publicly overlooking the glowing city skyline afterward. Rain reportedly falling softly emotionally around them publicly afterward, while cold wind privately moved gently through the night afterward. Witnesses later described the atmosphere emotionally looking straight publicly out of a romance film privately afterward. At first, conversation allegedly remained emotionally calm publicly afterward. Filming schedules privately. Recent interviews emotionally afterward. Travel stories publicly afterward. But according to insiders, Tian Xiwei reportedly suddenly became emotionally serious privately afterward. Witnesses later claimed she allegedly stared publicly at Zhang Linghe afterward for several silent, emotional seconds privately before quietly asking the question afterward that reportedly changed everything emotionally forever publicly afterward. Did you truly mean what you said about loving me so much? According to insiders, the emotional atmosphere reportedly froze instantly publicly afterward. because witnesses allegedly claimed Zhang Linghe reportedly looked completely emotionally stunned privately hearing Tian Xiwei publicly ask that afterward. Meanwhile, rain reportedly continued falling emotionally around them publicly while the city lights privately reflected softly across the balcony afterward. According to sources, Tian Xiwei allegedly continued emotionally speaking publicly before fear privately stopped her afterward. Witnesses later claimed she allegedly admitted emotionally that hearing Zhang Linghe publicly confess privately earlier afterward emotionally terrified her afterward more than she expected publicly. Because according to insiders, part of her reportedly desperately wanted emotionally to believe him publicly afterward. But another part privately feared afterward the emotional consequences publicly if those feelings emotionally were not truly real afterward. That confession reportedly visibly shook Zhang Linghe emotionally, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to sources, he allegedly never realized publicly how deeply Tian Xiwei privately doubted whether someone could emotionally love her publicly, that sincerely afterward. Then came another heartbreaking revelation emotionally afterward. According to insiders, Tian Xiwei allegedly admitted publicly she spent countless nights privately replaying Zhang Linghe's emotional words afterward, wondering publicly if they emotionally came from temporary feelings privately or something genuinely real afterward. That confession reportedly emotionally devastated Zhang Linghe instantly, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to sources, hearing Tian Xiwei publicly question privately his sincerity afterward emotionally broke something inside him publicly afterward. At one point, insiders claimed Zhang Linghe allegedly quietly stepped emotionally closer publicly toward Tian Xiwei afterward before softly asking privately why she emotionally doubted him publicly so much afterward. Then, according to witnesses, Tian Xiwei allegedly whispered emotionally the sentence publicly that reportedly shattered the entire emotional atmosphere privately afterward. Because everyone eventually leaves emotionally when feelings become too heavy publicly afterward. That confession reportedly left Zhang Linghe completely speechless emotionally, according to insiders nearby afterward. Because according to sources, he allegedly finally realized publicly Tian Xiwei privately carried emotional scars afterward far deeper than anyone publicly knew afterward. Meanwhile, according to witnesses, the balcony reportedly became emotionally silent afterward except for rain publicly falling softly privately around them afterward. Then came the emotional moment fans reportedly cannot stop talking about publicly afterward once details leaked privately online emotionally afterward. According to insiders, Zhang Linghe allegedly quietly admitted emotionally that every single word publicly he confessed privately to Tian Xiwei afterward came directly emotionally from his heart publicly afterward. Witnesses later claimed his emotional voice reportedly trembled privately while speaking publicly afterward. Because according to sources, he allegedly feared emotionally Tian Xiwei publicly might never truly believe privately how deeply he emotionally cared afterward. Then, according to insiders, Zhang Linghe allegedly admitted publicly that no matter how many people emotionally surrounded him privately every day afterward, Tian Xiwei reportedly remained publicly the only person afterward capable emotionally of making him privately feel understood afterward. That confession reportedly visibly broke Tian Xiwei emotionally, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to sources, hearing someone publicly speak privately with that level emotionally of honesty afterward became overwhelming publicly for her afterward. At one point, witnesses later claimed Tian Xiwei allegedly quietly started crying emotionally afterward while trying publicly to hide her tears privately from Zhang Linghe afterward. But according to insiders, Zhang Linghe reportedly immediately noticed emotionally and softly stepped publicly closer privately toward her afterward. Witnesses later described the emotional atmosphere publicly becoming heartbreakingly intimate privately afterward. Rain emotionally surrounding them publicly afterward. Cold wind privately moving softly through the balcony afterward. Two people publicly standing privately inches apart afterward while years emotionally of hidden feelings publicly finally surfaced privately between them afterward. Then came another devastating confession emotionally nobody expected afterward. According to insiders, Tian Xiwei allegedly admitted publicly she sometimes emotionally pushed Zhang Linghe privately away afterward, not because she lacked feelings publicly for him afterward, but because emotionally she feared caring privately too much afterward. That sentence reportedly emotionally shattered Zhang Linghe instantly, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to sources, he allegedly spent months publicly believing privately Tian Xiwei emotionally kept distance afterward, because her feelings publicly were weaker privately than his afterward. But suddenly, according to insiders, he allegedly realized publicly she emotionally suffered privately from the same fears afterward all along publicly. Then, according to witnesses, Zhang Linghe allegedly softly admitted emotionally that loving Tian Xiwei publicly never felt confusing privately to him afterward. The only painful part emotionally was wondering publicly whether she privately believed afterward she deserved that love emotionally at all publicly. That confession reportedly completely broke Tian Xiwei emotionally, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to insiders, nobody publicly had ever privately spoken to her emotionally that honestly afterward before publicly. At one point, witnesses claimed Tian Xiwei allegedly quietly asked emotionally what would happen publicly if their relationship privately became too emotionally difficult afterward because of fame, pressure, rumors, and constant public attention afterward. And according to insiders, Zhang Linghe allegedly answered emotionally, without hesitation, publicly afterward. Then we fight for each other instead of fighting against each other privately afterward. That sentence reportedly emotionally devastated fans, publicly once fragments privately leaked online afterward. Because suddenly, according to sources, the emotional conversation publicly transformed privately from celebrity gossip afterward into something heartbreakingly real emotionally. Two people publicly confronting privately the terrifying emotional possibility afterward of truly loving each other publicly despite fear afterward. Meanwhile, according to insiders, rain reportedly slowly softened emotionally outside publicly, while the city skyline privately glowed beneath the night afterward. Witnesses later claimed both stars allegedly remained emotionally standing together publicly afterward, without speaking privately for several long minutes afterward. Because according to sources, neither reportedly wanted emotionally the moment publicly to end privately afterward. Then came the final emotional confession, reportedly changing everything forever afterward. According to insiders, Tian Xiwei allegedly quietly whispered emotionally that despite all her fear publicly afterward, hearing Zhang Linghe publicly say he loved her privately still remained the happiest emotional moment afterward she secretly ever experienced publicly. That confession reportedly completely shattered Zhang Linghe emotionally, according to witnesses nearby afterward. Because according to insiders, he allegedly finally realized publicly Tian Xiwei privately loved him emotionally far more deeply afterward than she publicly allowed herself privately to admit afterward. And perhaps that became the most unforgettable part publicly of this entire emotional story privately forever afterward. Not the tears emotionally. Not the rain publicly. Not even the heartbreaking emotional question afterward. But the painful realization that sometimes the hardest part publicly about love privately is not feeling it emotionally, but believing afterward someone could truly feel it publicly for you forever. And now the only question remaining emotionally is this. When two people publicly care privately about each other so deeply afterward while fear emotionally keeps standing publicly between them afterward, should they risk emotional heartbreak privately for love, or continue hiding publicly from feelings afterward that may never disappear emotionally forever? If this story touched your heart, and you want more emotional celebrity drama stories like this, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who understands that sometimes the most emotional questions publicly are not asked with anger privately, but with fear afterward of losing someone forever.